What is up, bros? With Josh here. In today's video, we're doing another breaking it down video. In this game, we're in the tier 9 Japanese premium battleship, the Musashi. This is a ship that I tend to, maybe if I want to go out there and hit things hard, it's one I always do. Although it feels like my ship is cursed, and it felt like it throughout this entire game, where we tend to get good damage games, but not too many wins compared to some of my other ships. But this is a good game, and you'll see it kind of break down. But in this series, I'm always trying to think of cool things to look for and cool kind of topics to break it down. I don't know why I said cool twice, but hey, here we are. And this is a good example of when to ram. So I'm always trying to think of games where there's something that we can learn, and in this game you will see when is the right time to ram and what are the potential outcomes doing certain things. Now, one thing I do tend to notice when people go for the rams is they don't kind of see the plays. What I see a lot of is people kind of just going, I'm gonna die anyway, I might as well ram and get whatever. And then they kind of forget that they have other tools, whether that be torpedoes or whether that be guns. And what I always kind of recommend is ramming isn't a bad thing. There's always plays, but as long as you trade up, it's a very good thing. And that's what a lot of people tend to avoid. It seems like when people have the health advantage, they just get the ram because they know they can guarantee the kill. But if they are actually trying to, or maybe they have 20,000 life compared to the other battleships 90,000 life, they try to actually win the duel and end up just dying anyway. Not always, but this seems to kind of be the pattern that I see with a lot of rams. And a lot of people tend to not go for the ram in the correct wrong spot, or just that's their first play when it's actually kind of bad. Now, there are certain situations, sometimes you just can't control what you're doing, and you know, you just get into a spot and it's all you can have at some point. Yes, I know those are certain situations, but in some spots, ram can be a very, very good choice. Now, a lot of times, the ram is actually a bad play. Now, that may surprise a lot of people, because sometimes you dying is basically locking in the game, and a bit of a bummer. So, right now, we are in the Musashi, and we are trying to kind of figure out, again, this is so important in any ship, is to learn how to use the spotter plane. I highly recommend learning how to use the spotter plane. It seems like, honestly, fighter planes are worthless these days, and one thing you should really start learning is how to use the spotter plane and lead with it. And this is something you could also learn a lot on the Russian cruiser lines. Those things are extremely good to learn, because they have such a fast reload, and they have a very low trajectory, so very fast shells, as I should say. But here we kind of just see pretty slow. I don't want to overcommit. I want to say fairly centralized, as I always kind of talk about staying centralized, staying centralized, staying centralized, because if things happen on one side, especially in a relatively slow battleship, you don't want to overcommit and be stuck on one side of the map and be able to kind of rotate over. So on this side, though, we have a bit of a worrisome group. Instantly, we had and as you can see, learning how to use spotter plane, as I missed 2 shots back to back. We had a bit of a wild group over here that I didn't quite have a lot of faith in, and that was, we had a Camelus Colorado. Yes, I know camo, it doesn't always mean everything, but Camelus always tends to side on maybe not the best play. And we had an Akazuki that dropped smoke early and sat broadside sat broadside in his smoke. So this was kind of alarming. And we also had a Mogami that basically pushed right into the cap. So some pretty big red flags on this side, and they had a lot of ships actually pushing in. So for me, I kind of wasn't extremely excited about this side. As you see, the Mogami is getting wrecked because there's a ton of ships, and he beached. Our Colorado also beached. So that side of the map is kind of turning into what I thought it would, and a bit of a bummer there. So we kind of had 2 people basically YOLO there, and that is a bummer. But a lot of ships on that side, and this is something that we kind of are taking into. And again, I'm trying to stay as centralized as possible for these exact reasons. If something does go down where you're completely wrecked, I'm kind of like okay with it. And also, I kind of want to use this cyclone. Now, I tend to hate, if you ever watch us live on twitch.tv/mejosh, I hate cyclones. I despise them. I think they're terrible. I think they slow down the game, but every once in a blue moon, you can actually use them as your advantage. So one thing I'm looking for right now is using this island this island to defend me from this ship. So this ship is the Jean Bart, an extremely nasty ship. This is a ship that can burn you down and also do a drive-by, aka destroy you. And also the rune that is farther north is something I'm keeping an eye on, because we have an idea of where all the DDs are. We have the Yuguma, which is the scariest, that's way off to the west. We have the Skun, which is the Skuna, which is on the east side, and then we have the Sims, which is in the middle. But I'm not too worried about the Sims, honestly. The Sims isn't super scary, but I'm trying to use both the cyclone as well as these islands to get me some to actually have a nice little angle in on all of these. Now I'm not going to YOLO into all these as our Scharnhorst is right here, but I want to use all this cover. I'm basically going in here dark as a Musashi, so it's kind of nasty, and I'm also being able to get in nice broadsides on these guys. But really, the things I'm most worried about are the Jean Bart here. I'm not going to push around so he can wreck me broadside, but I am going to kind of help work on all these ships, and if we can start getting some damage in on these while I stay kind of safe here and use these islands, I will definitely do that. So down goes the Mogami, we get 1 kill. And I was kind of hoping that other things would get spotted here. So really, the only things that we have right here that are that have died so far are pretty much YOLOing ships. Our Akatsuki YOLO'd, our Scharnhorst YOLO'd, and the Mogami beached as he kind of went into the cap. So not too much was lost. So I was kind of hoping that we could get in here. And again, trying to make sure that I don't give a line on that. So I thought about pushing onto C-Cap here, but you just can't with that many ships. If I was a Jean Bart, I maybe would have pushed here, because the Jean Bart having that reload booster is actually pretty nice and can actually be quite strong. But I'm thinking, okay, that side is kind of wrecked. Nothing's really happening there. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, if we win the A side, which is slowly starting to happen, then potentially we let them kind of slowly come through B cap, and we can actually win the game. That's kind of what is going on in my head. Again, I'm super nervous about the Jean Bart because of the reload booster. Also, the Mogami has torps here. I was actually just a bit behind. If I would have been about a ship length ahead, I probably would have killed this Mogami. So he just got away, would have had the whole div killed. So we have to play a little bit around these torps, but the Cyclone is going to actually keep me a little bit safe from this. But there goes our Colorado that was on C-Cap. So every one that we were worried about on C-Cap is dead. Not surprising. And we are using, as you see, the Jean Bart is slowly moving up. We have that island. So our position has been pretty solid this game. But we have to worry about this rune now as well. This is one of the other ships I'm kind of scared about, because the rune is just so good at range. Luckily we have a Cyclone, but he does also have 6-kilometer torps. But he only has one side, one torp set on each side, and he has to kind of get around these islands and whatnot. So I'm not super worried about him right now. I think we're gonna actually be okay, and we'll get a nice little paint job right here, nice little scrape by from that, and we're actually gonna be okay with this rune. I figured I'd be fine. 6-kilometer torps. One thing that you should be doing is learning what the range of torps are on everything are. We're doing, as I said, pretty good here. So we are gonna push this rune back, hold down this cap, and actually hold down hold down the score right here as the points are coming in. Although we are starting to still lose some stuff, so this game is looking pretty sketchy. It seems like all the games for this Break It Down series are games that look like losses. But one thing you can do in games like this that can actually be a big turnaround is actually things like Rams. Now again, Rams, in most of the, and these are actually pretty big hits we're doing right here, and these are actually kind of important. We have to get far enough away for the torps, but just keep in mind everything damage-wise we're doing on this guy. Again, we knew we were fine because they're only 6-kilometer torps, but this game's looking pretty bad. You know, we've kind of lost everything. I'm like, hey, Donskoy, Hipper, Southside, if they can just maybe kill those, we'll be fine as long as they both live. I'm thinking, hey, Donskoy, Hipper versus 2 destroyers and a Tirpitz. It's pretty tough, but it isn't impossible. That's what I was kind of hoping would happen here. And my play is that, okay, I'll kill the Mogami. The Jean Bart I was hoping went around C cap, so I could kill the Mogami, potentially kill this rune, and then use these islands again as kind of the aggressive part here. So Mogami's pushing in. I'm not really worried about this. You know, he's going to be super close. Down goes our Donskoy. Bit of a bummer there. Actually was a Dove Strike. And this was the worst case scenario. We got terrible dispersion on this, on the Mogami. Left went right, right went left. But this is kind of what I'm talking about. And setting up for a ram is very, very important, because there's two things to think about, especially when it is a battleship. So let's just talk about that. So battleship, you know, you have your guns and you have your ship itself. You have the world's largest torpedo as well as the guns. And super unfortunate there. 9 shells, 4 kilometers, and here we go. So lots going on here, and one of the main things I want to kind of focus on is, I think I even control clicked, not that it really matters, I don't have manual secondaries, is I control click on the rune. The rune is the main thing I want to be getting all that damage on, and I'm holding on to this. I'm trying to figure out what the best thing to do is, and I think the Seattle pops up. So here you can see target selection on this ram. So one of the big things is my shot would have been wasted on that Mogami. I put 13k into that. Secondaries on this, and this is a good breakdown of what this ram, or what a good ram is. Now, as you saw right there, we were working on 3 targets at once. We were putting damage into the rune, which ends up being pretty clutch. And then we were putting shots into the Seattle, which just came through, which just chunked 13k down from him. And we also rammed the full life Jean Bart. So in one little split second, assuming we did a couple thousand damage to the rune, couple thousand damage to the rune with all the, you know, everything there. Rune's back up to 18k, but still we put in some damage, so we couldn't be a bit more aggressive. But we put a bunch of damage into that Seattle. The Zaro we hit earlier too, but in that last little bit we probably did nearly 100,000 damage in a few seconds. We took down a survivability expert Jean Bart, which had 72,000 life. We put in a bunch of damage, as you see our Bismarck right here kills that guy, as that was one we put 14,000 into, which was pretty nice. And our Hipper's going to take just a little bit of damage here, a little bit of a bummer. He actually could have avoided this. He has Hydro, but he's doing just fine, and this is how this game will go. But it's a really, really important. As you saw, I kind of thought about going for the salvo on the Jean Bart, but the better target was the Seattle, because I knew if I could just get some damage in on that ship, it would be fine. I would be able to start working on some other stuff. As you see, he pops Hydro here. He could have actually avoided those torps, and he would kill that. So that was basically a perfect little thing here that kind of worked out for us. And as you see right here, this King George actually ends up making the wrong play on this Bismarck, because he actually has to stay alive here. If he would have just completely stopped here, he would have been able to work with his rune and kill this Bismarck, and it would have been a 2v1. So he is down on life, which actually right now isn't the worst. But as you can see, the rest of this game, we have the lead. And so you see what I did for the ram. I up-traded. He up-traded a little bit. He had about 7,000 less damage. But as you see, the rune is going to start capping B cap almost any second now. So that means the rune would have been in a spot to start doing damage against that Bismarck. And that King George, as you see right there, that King George could have just stopped, and they could have killed that Bismarck, and they would have lived. So there is a time and place to ram in this game, and the rest of this game isn't super exciting. Well, I mean, I guess it kind of is, so we can watch the rest of it. But when you're going into a ram, always kind of look for what else you can do damage to. Think of it as the ram is that trade. You're going for that trade, and even a ram where you aren't going to kill it is honestly still a good place sometimes too, but it always has to be an up trade. And really, you have to look at multiple targets. What are you focusing on? Can you get more damage in on multiple targets? Can you pump in damage on, let's say, another cruiser, like I did that game, another cruiser for 13,000 damage? Can you do that? You know, can you hit multiple things? Can you get cap resets? Can you, as our guy just did, and about 1 second away, can you hit multiple things and make that ram even better? That would rotate the game. See, that rune would have been right there on the Bismarck, and he could have easily pushed in and torped him or just done damage, and they would have had 2 ships versus our 1 hipper. But instead, he went for the ram right for it because, you know, it's a 1-for-1. We should be good. We'll get this cap, no big deal. But they're actually going to end up losing this game. Spoiler alert. But as our hipper actually plays us pretty well. But that's the kind of things you have to look for. You have all these tools, secondaries, and your guns, and, you know, everything like that. Now, again, I tend to not go for the ram. In a lot of spots, it's not the best idea. But you have to look at some of the upsides. Can you hit multiple targets? Usually that's the time where ram is really, really, really good. When you can actually hit multiple things at once. Sometimes too, if you have a battleship that can torp or a cruiser that can torps on one thing, guns on another, and then the ram on something else is just the perfect world. You know, you get things like the Tirpitz and the Scharnhorst, stuff like that. Those are ships that can really, really, really make plays. Also stuff with really strong secondaries, especially if you have a secondary build. Super nasty. But yeah, there's lots of things to look for when you're going for a ram. Can you take out multiple targets? And also, as the King George did his ram this game, the ram 1-for-1 sometimes isn't good enough. You have to think about what's going to happen after, which I think a lot of people might not really do. But let's let the rest of this game play out. It's actually kind of funny, and a little bit of ring around the rosy. That's actually kind of clutch here. But overall, a really fun game. But in the end, what I want you guys to take away is think about what your ram is going to actually achieve. There's a time and place to ram. Sometimes it's a perfect move. Sometimes it is the move. But a lot of times it's actually the wrong play. And really, it's all about what can you get out of the ram? What can you get out of that trade? And is it worth it in the end? But here we have a tier 8 hipper versus a tier 9 rune. We have map control. We have the cap. We have the lead. And right now we're stopping it. We ended up doing about 190,000 damage. And let's watch these guys duke it out in a classic Mexican standoff on VCAP.
Affirmative.